Today we're talking about 10 foods that slowly destroy your brain. Many of these foods may cause brain fog, brain inflammation, and even memory loss over time. Let me ask you a simple question. What if the food you eat every day was quietly damaging your brain? Not in an obvious way, not instantly, but slowly, silently, year after year. As a doctor, I have seen many patients who complain about the same symptoms: memory loss, brain fog, poor concentration, chronic fatigue, mood swings, anxiety, difficulty focusing. Most people assume this is simply aging, but very often the real cause is something else entirely: diet. Your brain is one of the most energy-hungry organs in your entire body. Although it represents only about 2% of your body weight, it consumes around 20% of your total energy. That means the quality of the fuel you provide to your body directly affects how your brain functions. If you provide clean fuel, your brain thrives. If you provide inflammatory, processed, nutrient-poor food, your brain slowly begins to suffer. And the frightening part is this: many of the foods that damage the brain are considered completely normal in modern diets. People eat them every day. Breakfast cereals, processed snacks, sugary drinks, fast food. In fact, some of the most harmful foods for brain health are often marketed as healthy, low-fat, or convenient. But inside your body, these foods can trigger a cascade of biological reactions that affect your nervous system. Here are just a few examples of what can happen inside the brain when diet is poor: chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, impaired blood flow, insulin resistance in the brain, damage to neurons, accelerated brain aging. Over time, these processes are linked to conditions such as memory decline, cognitive impairment, depression, anxiety disorders, neurodegenerative diseases. In other words, the food you eat today can influence how well your brain functions 10, 20, even 30 years from now. But here is the good news: the brain is remarkably resilient. With the right nutrition, lifestyle habits, and awareness, you can protect your cognitive health and support your brain for decades. In today's video, I will explain 10 foods that slowly destroy your brain according to current scientific research. Some of these foods may surprise you. Others are extremely common and appear in millions of homes every single day. And if you recognize some of them in your own diet, do not panic. The goal of this video is not to create fear, it is to create awareness. Because once you understand how certain foods affect the brain, you can make better choices for your long-term health. So let's begin with the first food that quietly damages brain function, and it is something many people consume every morning. Food 1: sugary drinks. One of the most damaging things you can regularly consume for your brain is liquid sugar. Sugary beverages are everywhere: soda, sweetened coffee drinks, energy drinks, sweet tea, flavored juices, sports drinks. Many people drink these beverages several times per day without realizing the impact they may have on the brain. A single can of soda can contain 30 to 40 grams of sugar. When this amount of sugar enters your bloodstream quickly, it triggers a rapid spike in blood glucose. Your body responds by releasing insulin, the hormone responsible for regulating blood sugar. Occasional spikes are not necessarily harmful, but when this process happens repeatedly, day after day, the brain begins to experience something called insulin resistance. This condition is not only related to diabetes. Researchers now refer to Alzheimer's disease in some cases as type 3 diabetes, because insulin resistance in the brain appears to play a role in cognitive decline. When brain cells become resistant to insulin, several problems occur. Neurons struggle to use glucose for energy. Communication between brain cells becomes less efficient. Inflammation increases. Oxidative stress damages brain tissue. Over time, this can lead to memory problems, slower thinking, reduced attention span, increased risk of neurodegenerative disease. Sugary drinks are particularly harmful because they bypass the body's natural satiety signals. Solid food requires chewing and digestion, which signals fullness to the brain. Liquid sugar does not. This means people can easily consume hundreds of calories and massive amounts of sugar without feeling satisfied. Several long-term studies have linked frequent sugary beverage consumption to poorer memory performance, reduced brain volume in certain regions, and increased risk of dementia. And unfortunately, sugary drinks are often introduced at a very young age. Children who regularly consume high-sugar beverages may develop habits that affect their metabolic health and brain development later in life. If you want to protect your brain, one of the simplest changes you can make is reducing or eliminating sugary beverages. Better alternatives include water, herbal tea, unsweetened coffee, sparkling water, fresh fruit-infused water. Even small changes in daily habits can significantly improve metabolic and brain health over time. And now, let's move to the second food that may quietly damage your brain. Food 2. Ultra-processed foods. Let's move to the second category of foods that may quietly damage your brain over time, and unfortunately, it is one of the most common parts of the modern diet: ultra-processed foods. These foods are everywhere. They are convenient, inexpensive, and often extremely addictive. You find them in grocery stores, vending machines, and fast food restaurants. Examples include packaged snacks, chips, instant noodles, frozen meals, processed meats, sweet breakfast cereals, fast food burgers, highly refined packaged desserts. At first glance, many of these foods seem harmless, but the problem lies in how they are manufactured. Ultra-processed foods are designed to be highly palatable. Food manufacturers carefully combine sugar, salt, refined carbohydrates, and artificial flavor enhancers to stimulate the brain's reward system. This creates a powerful response in the brain similar to what occurs with addictive substances. When we eat these foods, the brain releases dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. Occasionally enjoying a processed snack may not cause harm. However, when these foods become a regular part of the diet, they may begin to influence brain chemistry in unhealthy ways. Research has shown that diets high in ultra-processed foods are associated with increased inflammation in the body and the brain. Chronic inflammation is one of the key mechanisms linked to cognitive decline. When inflammation persists, it can damage neurons and interfere with communication between brain cells. Over time, this may affect important brain functions such as memory, concentration, learning ability, emotional regulation, and increased risk of neurodegenerative diseases. Another major issue with ultra-processed foods is their lack of essential nutrients. Your brain requires a steady supply of vitamins, minerals, healthy fats, and antioxidants in order to function properly. These nutrients support the production of neurotransmitters, protect brain cells from oxidative stress, and help maintain healthy blood flow to the brain. Unfortunately, ultra-processed foods are typically nutrient-poor but calorie-dense. They provide energy but very little nutritional value. Imagine trying to run a complex computer using low-quality electricity. The system might still operate, but over time, its performance would decline. The same principle applies to the human brain. When the brain is repeatedly fueled with nutrient-deficient foods, its ability to perform complex tasks may gradually deteriorate. Several long-term population studies have observed a connection between diets high in ultra-processed foods and increased risk of depression and cognitive impairment. While diet alone does not determine mental health, it is increasingly clear that nutrition plays a meaningful role in brain function. Another hidden danger of ultra-processed foods is how easily they lead to overeating. Because these foods are engineered to be highly satisfying to the taste buds but low in fiber and protein, they often fail to trigger normal satiety signals. As a result, people may consume far more calories than their bodies actually need. Excess calorie intake can contribute to obesity, insulin resistance, and metabolic disorders. These conditions are strongly associated with changes in brain health and increased risk of neurological diseases later in life. The challenge is that ultra-processed foods are deeply integrated into modern lifestyles. Busy schedules, convenience, and marketing all encourage people to rely on packaged foods. But protecting brain health does not necessarily require eliminating all processed foods completely. Instead, the goal should be to shift the majority of the diet towards whole, minimally processed foods. Foods that support brain health include vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds, whole grains, healthy fats such as olive oil, fish rich in omega-3 fatty acids. These foods provide the nutrients the brain needs to maintain healthy neural connections and reduce inflammation. Small dietary changes over time can make a significant difference,